Okay, so if you've happened to stumble across this video and you're a video professional or a marketer or someone in the agency space, it may be helpful to you to know a little bit about where I see the future of video production and where things are going. Now, I don't just speak about this lightly. I've been a production studio owner myself for over 10 years now and an executive producer for most of that time, where I'm speaking directly with clients, with agencies on a daily basis and really getting a gauge on how the industry is shaping up. And obviously with the emergence of a lot of technologies these days, there are some concerns, and rightly so. And I just wanted to take some time to talk through that. Maybe it will resonate with some of you, maybe you'll have different opinions, and I'd love to know those in the comments. But as I said, I have been a production company owner for over 10 years now. I've worked with companies of all different sizes, from startups to Fortune 100 companies, and with budgets from $3,000 all the way up to $500,000 plus. And so I feel like I have a good spectrum of working at different levels of the industry and how those things are shaping up individually. One thing that is definitely apparent across the board, not just in production, but across agencies and marketing in general, is AI is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. And if used correctly, it can be a tool to help improve our craft. And I don't think that people are looking at it from the right perspective. Creative is creative, and the creative people in our industry are the ones that are going to flourish and take advantage of the AI capabilities that are out there. There are some technical spaces that are definitely going to be influenced and are already being influenced by the technology that's coming out. And in my opinion, it almost feels like it's the reverse of what most people think it could have been, where high-end commercial is going to be impacted more so than the lower-end jobs. It's almost the inverse of what's happening in the agency space. What we're seeing is a lot of lower-end jobs, lower pay jobs, let's say, being taken away. Copywriters, junior editors, analysts, those are all being taken away and replaced with AI. We've seen it already. WPP, big agencies like that are just completely eradicating those lower level jobs and definitely not hiring for them these days. So I think the inverse of that is going to be what's happening in the video production space. Look at brand anthems, look at high-end commercial pieces that don't necessarily have that one-to-one human interaction. I think what you'll see is top of funnel content being replaced quite easily, and you've already started to see it. I recently saw a piece from Liquid Death, who has an amazing creative team. They created a commercial that could have easily have been multiple millions to create if they were to go traditional production, but they created it all with AI, and it was great. It went viral, maybe because of the fact that it was fully AI, maybe because it was actually a really good comedy piece, but it's a really good example of like top level, top of funnel brand awareness campaigns that could potentially be really impacted by the emergence of AI. And then on the reverse of that, what I'm seeing is going to be a good safety net and something that's going to be around for a while, which will always be the case, is reverting back to the human stories and the emotional elements that come along with that. Think customer testimonials, think executive leadership videos. These are the real emotional stories that have real people in them that if they were replaced by AI, would completely eradicate any kind of trust that you could have with an organization. You can just picture it if a company that you know, Apple for example, the review or testimonial could be real, but as soon as they put that with an AI bot or an AI generated image, the trust itself is gone. It can be as real as you like, but no one's gonna believe it and no one's gonna trust that from a brand. So I think companies are gonna lean into that heavily, because that's gonna be the differentiating factor now that everyone has access to everything from an image generation standpoint. The trust factor is gonna be the highest commodity that you can take advantage of in marketing, and obviously video can lean heavily on that. And off the back of that, I think what you're going to see is the rise of the adaptation to the creator economy approach. And by that I mean content creators these days create high-level content that has value, that drives potential customers towards their product or service at more of an organic, viral approach. It's very holistic, it's very well-rounded. It's content across multiple platforms, consistently providing value and gaining trust. And I think that, again, it comes back to that word trust, gaining trust and pushing people towards a paid service or product. And I think what we're going to see is a lot of companies leaning into that approach and leaning into their people as well, and their people's audience, because the workspace is ever evolving. People are coming in and out of organizations, bringing eyeballs from other relationships, other companies that they've worked at, and bringing those into new organizations. And what we're going to see is companies leveraging those audiences to benefit the business. A good example of this is Cluely. Cluely is a good example of this. Cluely is a software app that uses AI to basically be ever present on your computer. It analyzes everything from document processing to Zoom calls, everything that you're doing. It provides real-time feedback on the work that's displaying on the screen. It's not a standalone interface, it takes over the entire computer. They're going viral because of their product, but also because they set a standard that every engineer that they hire needs to have at least 100,000 followers on any given platform. And I think that's just to kind of look into the future of how things are going. They are leveraging these massive audiences at scale to help promote this brand. And I can see that being widely adopted by the broader organization, the broader marketplace, as things evolve, because ultimately it's free audience on top of the salary that you're paying the employees. So extremely valuable and extremely high leverage. Thirdly, what we're going to start seeing, and we've already started seeing, I can tell you this from real world experience, is the adaptation towards internal production studios. So for a long time now, we've seen most companies have just a few options that all have their downsides, all have their plus sides. You have, if you're a company and you need a marketing video, for example, you have a few options. You have, I can hire a production studio like ourselves or an agency. You'll look to them to develop creative and execute on the project. What you would expect is a very high level, but also very high cost of producing that content. The second option is to hire someone full-time in-house. And with that, you get one person with a very high salary, assuming that they know what they're doing and are very competent with the work that they produce. And then you also get the added benefits and then the pressure on the marketing team to feed that person content consistently. And I recently heard from the marketing director at a very high, well-known tech company. She came to me and she wanted me to connect her with freelancers that we've worked with in the past to do some of the low-level stuff that we as a production company wouldn't necessarily want to take on for her, because she had a full-time employee that most of the time sat around working on personal projects because they didn't have the volume to feed that one person. And again, we come back to the fact that that's just one person. You're only going to get, even if they're great, you're only going to get a certain level of quality out of a one-person production team. The third option is to bring everything in-house, just do it yourself on the phone, and which is fine for volume, and you can do it as and when is needed, but you're not going to get that production quality. The fourth option is the one that's not spoken about much, which is internal producers. So either a freelance person that's now been hired full-time by an organization to produce and run the video production company. But instead of hiring those full-time videographers or full-time content creators, they're utilizing the freelancer market just like a studio would. And I think this is where things are going to evolve. I've been saying for years internally, there's a lot of companies that come to us that want content, that need content, but don't have the budget or don't have the need for a production studio. And they don't realize that they don't need a production studio until we tell them that they don't. I've turned down hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of projects because we don't feel right taking on a job that doesn't need. I would rather educate the client on what they should do than take their business and not feel right about taking their business. So the fourth option is in-house producers or an in-house marketer taking the role of the executive producer from a studio and acting as that internal production studio. The benefits here are you can produce work as and when is needed. You're not going to be sitting around, you've got lots to do anyway, but when a project is needed, you'll be there with the skill set and the know-how to execute. You won't have to pay the outrageous overhead that studios and agencies pay and the margins and markup that come along with any given project. And also you'll be able to utilize the freelancer market, the same freelancer market that your agencies or studios use as well to execute a project at a certain level that is going to be consistent with that of the studios or agencies. And I think, my opinion, that's where things are going. That's where things have been going for the last 10 years. But even more so now that marketing budgets are being cut because of AI and the things that can take to replace some of the other marketing positions. I think you're going to see a lot more internal production studios pop up around organizations, and maybe some of the studio jobs and agency jobs being taken away and repurposed as an internal production job. So this is kind of where my hypothesis on this comes out. I'm not just a production studio owner, I'm also an educator and a consultant when it comes to how to bridge that gap between consistently paying agencies to taking some of that burden off the agencies and taking some of that cost off your marketing budget and bringing it in-house. I speak to clients all the time about how you can do that and how you can manage productions internally, maintaining that high level of quality that you've established with maybe your agency or studio partners, but now doing it inside and maybe bringing that cost way down and still achieving those high levels. And that's something that I've been doing for a while now, and something that I think is going to really catch on. So I hope this didn't sound too down, because I definitely think the world that we are in there are a lot of question marks still, but I just wanted to give my perspective on how I think things can get better, how I think things will ultimately develop, and how things actually have been developing maybe behind the scenes that not everyone has a point of view on, or maybe has access to that point of view. And ultimately, I think things are evolving, right? So things are evolving, and I want to make sure that everyone is aware of where things are going so that you can adapt and not react. So that's all I've got to say today. I know it was kind of all over the place, but this is a new format here, talking more organically to the camera instead of scripting things. And I hope you liked it, and hopefully there's some value there, and we can talk about this more in the future. All right, bye.